Whether you're an experienced gardener or just a beginner, it never hurts to review the basics for a successful garden.
So this morning we are brushing up on those basics. Garden Guide Dale Kay live, walking us through what we need to know. We're all excited to get out in the garden, but a good refresher, Dale. Good morning.
Good morning, Kelly. You know, it's officially spring, so I thought I'd come outside and do a wee little segment, a tele segment out here. And actually, it's quite chilly. I'm actually pondering why on earth I decided to do this outside. But before the spring does arrive where we can actually plant, and there's quite a bit of snow in this backyard, come to think about it, there are some basics, as you mentioned, that are always good to know and maybe freshen up on them. The first one is really exposure or sunlight, and that's a little bit getting to know your garden or your landscape, maybe even your deck or your patio when it comes to lighting, because it's probably one of the most essential elements to plant health, plant growth. You know, of course, plants need sunlight. So let's break it down, because oftentimes when you're shopping for, it doesn't matter whether it's perennials or annuals, no matter what, it starts to talk about full sun, part shade, and all that kind of good stuff. So here I've broken it down for you about what, the snow's quite deep. I've broken it down for you. Full sun is 6 or more hours of direct sunlight, preferably afternoon sun, but 6 or more hours is full sun. Part sun is 4 to 6 hours, so a little bit less. That constitutes part sun. When we're talking about part shade, this is where it kind of gets a little confusing. Part shade is 4 to 6 hours of morning sun only. So morning sun, 4 to 6 hours, that is part shade. Full shade is less than 4 hours of direct sun. And then finally, dense shade is really no direct sunlight at all. And you'll find that oftentimes in between buildings where there's just no chance for natural light, or underneath really dense tree canopies. That's where you bump into that. The other thing that you want to take note of is your plant zones. We are in zone 4, 4A, 4B here in the Twin Cities. You don't have to go too far out of the 7-county metro, northern Minnesota, and then you get into zone 3. So on the back of the tags here somewhere, it always says what zone. This is zone 3 to 9. 9 would be like down in Louisiana somewhere. So this plant, doesn't like, it's really cold. Look at that, it's gone bent over. This plant is bulletproof because it will actually grow and thrive in northern Minnesota. So know your zones and be careful. If it's zone 5, then you know you've got to offer those plants, particularly when it comes to perennials, some winter protection. If it just says zone 9, you know it's not hardy here in Minnesota. You might be able to get it to work in places like Louisiana and the South. The next thing, of course, really important is soil. The better the soil, fundamentally, the better your plants will grow. Of course, we talk about compost a lot. It really is garden gold. You can make your own compost at home. Really simple to do. Kitchen scraps, veggie scraps, eggshells, all that good stuff. Lawn clippings would be just fine. Leaf clippings just fine. What you don't want to put into your compost is any pet waste or any meat or disease plants. That's what stays out. It's always a good idea to take a little soil test kit, maybe every couple of years. You don't have to do this every year, but there is this one here called, it's from soilkit.com. soilkit.com. This actually gets mailed in, and it's an app. You get all your testing done right there. It's super easy. If you don't want to mess around with an app, you can always buy one of these kind of ready to use kind of pH or soil test kits that will work quite well. And if you're doing container gardening, of course, make sure you got a good quality potting soil. The better the soil, again, the better your plants will grow. The next is, of course, fertility and fertilizer. Oh, look at Chip. Look at Chip. And the snow's so deep, so if you see the camera doing this, it means he's fallen in the snow. Fertility is really important. 3 basic types of fertilizer. There's the water soluble that you mix with water. That's the one that turns your water blue. It's got a dye in it, so you know you've got fertilizer in there. And that's great for late season fertilizing, particularly on your annuals. It works as a foliar fertilizer, so if you kind of splash that on the leaves, the plants will take it in that way. Then there is a controlled release or a slow release. It's probably more controlled now because of the technology, the polymer that's coated on the fertilizer. That's the little pearls. I'll just hold that up there. That's the little pearl fertilizer. Usually says feeds 4 to 6 months. That's a controlled release fertilizer. And then also there is fertilizers that aren't encapsulated like this one or coated, and they are a lot more readily available or quickly available to plants, and that's just your usual type of granular fertilizer. The numbers: nitrogen is for foliage, that's always the first number. Phosphate is the second one, that's for roots and flowers. And potassium, the last number, is for really health and disease resistance. They are the macro, the large nutrients. There's also a lot of micronutrients that you'll also get in a water-soluble fertilizer. We've got to talk about watering because it can be somewhat complicated and it varies per the season, because when plants are little plants, they don't use quite as much water, and in spring we often get some rainfall, so that you have to take that into consideration as well. Once plants develop more roots, gets warmer, oftentimes our watering practices have to change in the summer as well. For a healthy lawn, healthy garden, about 1 inch of water a week is optimal. I always recommend having a little rain gauge just out, and I like this one. Maybe my eyes are getting a little bit old too, but this has big numbers, so I can just really look right outside my window and see how much rain I've got, and that will also help me determine when I'm watering. But just be aware that watering does change per season, and as we get deeper into the summer, you'll usually find you're ending up watering more. And make sure when you are watering more, make sure you water earlier in the morning. You'll have a lot less problems with evaporation, instead of splashing water around in the middle of the day, and your plants will actually like it better, they'll thrive better, there'll be a lot less problems with disease as well. And then finally, just a basic pruning and deadheading throughout the season is really, really key and essential as well. So I'm just going to stand here and wait patiently for the snow to melt, and I'll come back. I don't think I'm going to do telly until it's gone. So,
oh, Dale, then we won't
we'll see
see
what
you
happens
for
next
like
week. Back
a
to
month and a half.
Yeah, good luck with that.
We'll miss you.
No, don't. Maybe you secretly wish that. I don't know.
No, never. Dale, thank you. Appreciate it. Now go inside and warm up because it is kind of cold out there.